freaking good afternoon, everybody. This is a study guide regarding called the Iron Will game. I was white, and my opponent was a nominal human player, freaking into 11. Black before the rest of the game is Mastery Stockfish. The theme is resilience, calculation, and forge standard. Disclaimer and context before we get started. This game was not played from the starting position. Moves 1 through a minute, and I played against a human opponent who resigned at move 11. Moves 11 through 57 to rooms against Mastery Stockfish to test conversion techniques. My objective is simply to demonstrate that a one position against a perfect defender requires more than mental toughness than the open. It requires so much more. Phase 1 is simply just a setup. E4, D5 is getting the immune defense. E takes D5, putting my pawn as a poison pawn to gain the tempo on the queen, and then the strike for the center immediately. Black plays the best move in this position, knight c3, to attack the center and to not allow my pawn to overstep. I believe we play knight f3. Forget black response to a looking to, let's see. So obviously bishop to g4 from my perspective. I respond to h3, and I immediately have one dictating point from this game. I say I do not want to draw, I want to win. Why? Because I immediately push this pawn to chain these pawns together. This bishop guards this pawn, this rook guards this pawn, and it gains another tempo on the bishop. Obviously the queen is the scope of this diagonal, but everything is still defended. There's only squint. So this diagonal is completely defended, by the way. If you did not notice, let's continue. My opponent plays bishop to g6. I immediately fiend shadow my bishop up to g2. Immediately he goes queen to e6 check, which I just simply put my knight on the outpost, saying I'm going to take all these squares away from you. Immediately black tries to add another defender to attack another attacker to this knight. I immediately shove my pawn immediately into the center, which also knows the bishop defense, and I can end this pawn. If the knight takes, this pawn's going to be hanging, and this queen eventually may get traded off. I immediately allow black to take, and I take away from the center here. Why do I capture here instead of here? Many beginning principles you would say to capture this way, but ultimately look at the problem now. You need to capture the other way so you can stop the king from castling and give a free cut file for your queen. Everything is still technically defended because the bishops are playing more of a passive role but have way more scope. Black Usher bishop playing more defensive role, guarding its important pawn. This guard pawn to this pawn, this square, this scope. Everything is defending one another right now. Now, immediately after move 11, my opponent resigns. Why? I really don't know. So I know I have an advantage, but this is where we transition to Stockfish. 11 to 57. This is Mastery Stockfish. Immediately I offer a queen trade. Simply going for an exchange like this, which if you calculate it right, immediately Stockfish tries to take a lot more squares in space. I say, okay, if you want to put your main piece on the board and take my file, okay, let's trade queens. I move my knight backwards to guard my bishop. Now also, pay attention, this pawn is hanging. And also pay attention that this pawn is hanging. So immediately he takes the free piece. I take the free piece on h7. Stockfish did the c2. Immediately Stockfish goes here to take all these diagonal swords away from my bishop, and to continue to stop my king from castling if my bishop develops. I'm going to go knight to 3c to attack the bishop. I'm going to put my bishop here to centralize it and to attack this pawn. Stockfish simply counterattacks my bishop. I move my bishop back and make this weird little fortress with my king and bishops, and the bishop pair and the pawns connected and the rook. Now immediately Stockfish takes my hanging pawn. I immediately castle. Stockfish trades double pawns. I immediately attack the rook. Stockfish moves back, and I immediately sacrifice my dark square bishop. Why? Because it's the most passive piece in the game right now, and it's saying I can take away one here. Stockfish's keys fighters. I'm going to do it, no hesitation. Now there's double isolated. Now there's a backwards pawn and a pawn that could potentially be isolated, and this a pawn is completely open to potentially become passed soon. Ready to go rook to b1. Stockfish goes immediately to d5. This point right here, let's go d9 to 15. Now let's go here. Where am I at? Move 15. The question is to go back before we go and explain the most important move of the game of why I was able to convert this, was why bishop takes b7 is risky. Pay attention and look at these squares. And pay attention to what role my bishop is having in guarding this pawn. It's risky because it grabs material on a free pawn and also damages black pawn structure. However, it leads directly to the rook taking the b file and attacking this pawn once I leave this pawn undefended, which I already noticed was hanging. Let's go back to move 23. I immediately put the king in check into an in-between move. Even now, and even since phase 2 of move, let's even go move 18 to 24, which is we call the hero moves. The goal was when under fire, do not retreat, counterattack. If you're gonna take fight fire or fire, especially when you have such a endgame advantage. If I'm able to convert this correctly, pieces are way more coordinated. Stockfish bishop, freaking pieces are very active, very passive, and there's a forcing of double pawns, either to make these squares very weak, potentially, or to make, or they're simply opening the position. And now let's go back to move 22. Playing rook to freaking b1. Me realizing that this piece is gonna be the main fight for Stockfish. Why? Because this pawn's hanging. Even though almost all my pieces are light squares, the material complex is still gonna make things more complicated. So I immediately say, okay, if you want to go ahead and attack my only hanging piece, and I'm willing to give up a full rook to create, what's called isolated pawns, and for my knight to sit on the top of these pawns in the future for them never allowed to pass. Not right away because the light square bishop is in such a perfect spot, but for the future. Then I play rook to b1, rook to b freaking rook to e freaking takes the e file. I immediately go here, king to f2 to stop the rook from invading on the 6th, 7th, or 8th rank, and to guard the bishop. And the bishop continues to defend these pawns. The doctor bishop is off the board, so this pawn is completely okay for now. Even now, let's go. Stockfish goes immediately f5 to see if he's willing. She's trying to undouble his pawns and to simply get a pawn majority on this side of the board. If I were to take like this, I'm going to lose. Why? Because it's double pawns, and even though these are double pawns, it's gonna make the game so much more complicated. So I immediately decline the trade. I say absolutely not, and I simply say, hey, if you want to take me, come take me. Well, I got my bishop defending, and I can simply trade off the bishops, and then I can potentially put my rook here, potentially put my knight here. Things become less complicated and more convertible. Immediately Stockfish takes. I take back with h takes g4 because simply my bishop was playing more of a defensive role, so I didn't want to overstat. It's a 2 to 3 majority. However, I played this right. Look at this square that this bishop is guarding. If one of these pawns get traded off, this bishop has an important role of stopping this pawn from becoming passed, or potentially passed, or becoming just a very stupid nuance. Immediately Stockfish goes f5 and decline the trade of trading the pawns. Why? Because now the bishop already gets the x-ray of this. All he gets it's a discovering controlling of the square of freaking h5 to stop this potential pawn from passing. This pawn is still passed. The rook covers this entire file, and the knight is slowly going to be able to invade and harass this bishop. I do not want black to get to. The knight on the c3, a4, and d5, it is nuanced. I'm restricting the black king. I'm simply saying, hey, you can't attack my rook for free. If you want to go ahead and attack my knight, I'm going to discover check you, because my bishop is here. These pawns, everything is just restricting Stockfish from running counterplay. To even continue, right, if Stockfish plays freaking c6, I could have did a discover check. However, I didn't not want to play fancy at all. I wanted to play an in-between move. Stockfish moves out the way. I check again. Stockfish moves out the way. I immediately now take an opportunity to get behind this pawn. Rook to h7. He decides to push the pawn. I immediately move my king and say, okay, I don't need to take with the bishop. Why? Because the bishop's doing an important job of keeping this knight anchored here, restricting black's movement, covering all these dark squares. So I simply say, let me move my king forward. And Stockfish is literally just shuffling pieces because he knows it's lost. Like, if Stockfish still won the fight, Stockfish would have took the rook. But he would have lost that poker 10. And this would have been basically a theoretical draw. Why? Because, like it would have been a theoretical draw. Just to give it as an example, let's go back here. I simply get out the line of fire, check the king. Now I take the last pawn. I immediately block with the bishop, making a miniature fortress. Knight guards light squares. Bishop guards light squares. King has all the pieces defended. Bishop has scopes of all these diagonals. This pawn is going to become passed and defended by the rook very, very soon. And immediately Stockfish goes a1. I continue to push the pawn, defend with the rook, move my rook out the way, and I go for a promotion. Queen freaking goes here. Why does Stockfish do this? To simply block. I don't immediately take right away, and I say, hey, come take me. Stockfish moves out the way and says, nope, I don't want to take. I check, and then checkmate. Why this is? Because knight guards both squares. King defends the knight, guards these two squares. Rook guards his b file. Freaking knight guards these squares. And the king is completely boxed in. The bishop is in danger, and the king cannot take away the bishop or block. So, this is the truly part of the backwards method. I move 45, knight to c6 check. The king is completely trapped. It has nowhere beneficial to go, and I'm going to defend my knight. When I continuously do, when I cleared the f pawn, I defended the pawn always first and coordinated all my pieces. I took my time with the promotion, and I didn't have to force anything. I just made a textbook clean kill, a clean execution. Look at the geometry. The knight covers b4 and c7. Like I said, freaking b4, and b4 and c7. First c7, freaking Charlie 7. Not c4, c7. And the king covers c7. Knight guards freaking a freaking 7. My rook guards the entirety of the b file. My knight guards freaking a5. The bishop guard is attacking the king through freaking c4. The queen is just simply defending the rook. And it's just an absolutely disgusting checkmate. The bishop ends the final blow. The checkmate only happened because I kept my active pieces for the last 20 moves. This is why we never give up. Move 18, we lost b2 pawn, we didn't panic. Move 20 more, we were undertrusted us, sacrificed the rook for the initiative and their eventual convertible endgame. Move 57, we won because I refused to attack the draw. Move very far away as moves ago. The challenges I want to encourage you with is to go back to move 22. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 2. Rook to takes b1. Move freaking... Nope, this is the wrong one. Oh, yes, wait, this it? Where the frick is... No, it's not correct. No way, my thing just crashed. Immediately go to move 22, and right before rook takes d6, try to beat the engine without taking that bishop. You're going to lose every single game, in my personal opinion. So, I apologize. Have a good rest of the video.